We are in chapter 15. I think I just managed to get last week's uploaded, so you should have that in your... They're down the other end of the table. Nobody will hear it. But now we've talked about it. So that's it. That's all we can do. Okay. Where are my notes? Oh, let's use these notes. They have actual notes on them. All right. So if you remember, this chapter 15 is a big deal. So we're spending a little time on it. This is the Jerusalem Council. This is where there's this question about what should we do with the Gentiles. They are coming to follow Jesus. Do they need to be circumcised? Do they not need to be circumcised? Do they need to convert to Judaism and become as the Jews? Or are they actually coming into a different covenant, a new covenant, something different than was there before? There have been these kind of upstarts going around saying they clearly need to become a full part of the Jewish church in order to follow Jesus. And so this question has kind of been really sowing dissent within the church. You have Paul and Barnabas, who have gone to Jerusalem to sit with the other apostles. So Peter and James that are there among other apostles to begin to kind of hash this question out. So really, it's really funny. Like, it's all about who reads this, because I was doing a little more reading on it this week, and it's all about who reads it on what lens. Like some people, I was listening to some Orthodox guys, and they're like, well, clearly this shows that the church was not congregational in its kind of structure because they're coming together to, they're going to Jerusalem to kind of consult with Peter and with James and all this sort of thing. And it's like, I read this and I'm like, well, clearly it was congregational because they're getting everybody together. And when they gather everybody together, that's when the Holy Spirit descends, and they are working to discern the Spirit, the sense of the Holy Spirit. So they were making the same case kind of that I would make, but coming to the opposite conclusion. So I'm like, so clearly you can see, because they went there, they're seeking Peter's guidance. So Peter is the first pope, and we should have this episcopal structure. And I'm like, well, clearly, no, they just had to get the band together in order to, you want to get all the best, if you're going to have a congregational meeting, you want the whole congregation in the room because you want the fullness of the Holy Spirit to be present. So, clearly. So it was hilarious to me. I was giggling about it all week. So these are the things that I think are funny. But, I have no friends. But you see that, since I'm congregational, and we'll take it from that angle, but you can see in what we read last week that here, Peter gives up and gives his best shot at it. James stands up and gives his best shot at it. Paul and Barnabas give their best shot at it. The church gathers, and it's not a vote. It's not a 60-40 vote. It's not democratic. It's not even theocratic in the sense that, notice Peter does not say, all right, I've heard everybody's talk, this is what we're going to do. And even James doesn't say that. They say, this is what we recommend. This is what I think. And they pour it all together, and they come to this consensus that is born out of the presence of the Spirit. That is, I'm sorry, Father Andrew Stu McDamick, that is the congregational way. That is what we seek to do. Now sometimes we do it well, sometimes we don't. I'm not going to defend every great meeting we've had as being, truly in the congregational way, but that is what we aspire to, is to do what they're doing, in this Jerusalem Council. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I really want to point that out. We didn't hit on it as much last week, but I really wanted to point that out because I feel like our tradition is right out of the first council. Like, what we do is, you're the Peter and you're the Lydia and you're the Phoebe, and and I'm the John Mark because I just run away. We are them sitting in this same council, and they come and sit with us. The saints come and sit with us when we gather in this way, because the Spirit comes with them, and when the Spirit comes with them, all eternity comes with them. And so we're in. This isn't a thing that happened 2,000 years ago. This is a thing that we continue to participate in, and are participating in right now.
There's no domination.
Right. There is truly the subjugation of the self, the surrender of the self to the will of the Holy Spirit. That's the hope. That's the hope. Now, we're not all that evolved. Not all of us are that evolved. I'm not that evolved. We come to it with egos, but we at the same time, trust in God even to work with our, like all great decisions. You have to remember that everything Jesus calls you to, He already factored in your stupidity. There's this way, there's this way in which, He knows you better than you do. Like if you're, these things that the decisions we're called to as a church, Christ knows that we're not perfect either, or that, but that we can have perfection in our midst, like that we have that potentiality. So okay. Oh yeah, good. That's a little bit of air movement. Yeah, it usually does the trick. So, good. So you heard from Peter, you heard from Paul and Barnabas, and then you heard from James. Remember, James was the guy it's kind of James' home court. This is kind of James's. Even though Peter is kind of the apostle, this is in James. James is the pastor of Jerusalem. This is his. And two things I want, just quick things that I wanted to pull out that I didn't pull out last week about James is so James is quoting Amos. We didn't spend a lot of time on that quote from Amos last week, so he says, "And I will rebuild." So this is where. So James is really he's making the biblical case. He's making the case from the Hebrew Scriptures that have now given way to the Messiah. So remember, we're now in this new age of the Messiah. We're not disconnected from. We're not throwing the Hebrew Scriptures out. This is a direct and continued line. We've been saying the Messiah is coming. Here He is. Now we're going to continue on. We might be graduating from grade school to high school, but we're still in school. Like we're not. It is an unbroken line.
Jesus said He can fulfill the law.
Exactly. And so He says, "And I will rebuild the tent of David that has fallen." So the tent of David is not the temple. The tent of David is the tabernacle. Remember, David didn't build the temple. Solomon built the temple.
It says tabernacle.
It's some translations say tabernacle. Yeah.
Verse 16.
So yeah. So the tabernacle, that's the throne. That's the seat of God. That was where the tabernacle is where the Ten Commandments lay. Where the like if you saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, like that's where the Ten Commandments was, the box the Ten Commandments were in. But it was also considered this place that the Spirit of God came and sat amongst us. It's where God would sit there. So there's a sense of so there would be the presence of the Spirit of God in the tabernacle. So when He says, "I come to rebuild the tabernacle, I come to rebuild the tent of David," it's the place that we're going to meet God. So that where God is going to be met, not the temple, He's referring to the place that where God will be met. And so I'll rebuild its ruins, I'll restore it, and then goes on to the line, "And all the Gentiles who are called by my name." So, "And the remnant of mankind will seek the Lord, and all the Gentiles who are called by my name." Now, who were the Gentiles that were called by their name before?
The centurion, I can't remember his name.
Right, but before that, you've got
Into the sea.
like the Cornelius.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Right. So it's you're 100% right. It's Cornelius. Okay. There's no Gentiles called before this. The whole point of the Hebrew Scripture is that there's the Jews and then there's everybody else, and and they don't touch. And what's that?
Paul was not.
Paul's a Pharisee. Yeah. So he's a Jew. Yeah. No,
Pharisees are
Paul is, yeah, so Paul is not only a Jewish, but he is a Pharisee. So he's a Jewish clergy. So, yeah, so he's like a Jewish meat. Like, I mean, he's like a Jewish, so he's,
He's a Jewish name.
so, so you have, because the whole point of the Jewish law is to create a barrier around the world and the Jews, so that in the middle of the Jews could be the tabernacle, could be the place that, so there's this little pure postage stamp of a spot in the world in which God could come sit among his people. That's the Jewish construct, okay, prior to the coming of the Messiah. Now, when the Messiah comes, this is what James is doing, is he's saying the Messiah has come, and when the Messiah comes, that little postage stamp becomes the entire universe, not even just the world, becomes the entire universe. That people we have not met and have not met us, that that live in places we've never heard of, those people are now on that postage stamp because God comes to dwell with humanity.
God
So,
made it the postage stamp when Moses came down the second time
right.
with the second set of tablets.
Yep.
Because God, I think, meant for the Jewish people to be the light of love for the world.
Right. Well, that's
That was the
exactly.
purpose.
Exactly. That's the whole point. Is this isn't a plan B? This isn't a like, oh, maybe someday we'll get to be able to save. The plan was always to save the whole world. Exactly.
Right.
But if you're going to invade anywhere, you have to start with a beachhead, and that was the beachhead. But it's like, you have to start with a place you
I
can.
see that like the purity is there. The place that they all come to find the light of love is the purity that comes from the rules that God set up, so they can be that light.
That was exactly, yeah.
But
That's
they
exactly.
blew it, and that's why God needed to send Jesus.
Well, it's not even that they. It's yeah. I mean, in part they blew it, but in part it was never the plan to be for that. It was never the point that it was just going to be them.
No.
You know what I mean? Like even
like to bring everybody in.
it
to be
really
an example to the
yeah
world.
yeah. But it really didn't matter. Like the Messiah was always going to come.
That's what I thought.
Like it didn't matter how well they did or they didn't
Okay.
do.
Oh, yeah,
You see what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's not like the Messiah was always going to come. Now we can talk a lot about why 2,000 years ago, why in that spot, why without like blah blah blah. But the point is, the point was always the salvation of all of humanity.
Right.
That was always the end point, and that was always where God's been taking us. And so
Right.
that's the point James is making here. He's like, when he says all the Gentiles called by my name, it's like they all know there were no Gentiles called by my name up until this point, and now the Gentiles are being called, which means we're in this 2.0 reality. We're in this high school reality. We're in the time of the Messiah now, because he's actually pointing at a sign, saying this is a sign and wonder. Like Amos told us, 500, 600 years ago? Amos told us 600 years ago, when the Gentiles start showing up, that means the Messiah has come. And he's like, don't make me tap the sign. Like the Messiah, the Messiah has come, and the Gentiles are showing up, and we need to receive them. We don't need to put more of a burden on them than they.
Just another proven prophecy.
Exactly, it's another proven prophecy, right?
Aren't there and I don't know enough about the Bible, but aren't there lots of references in the Old Testament with God referencing the Jewish people as my chosen people?
Mm-hmm.
And so this seems a complete shift from that, so that in the Old Testament, the Jews were his people, seemingly to the exclusion of other people. Is that? And now it shifts, that it's no longer just the Jews. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. So,
Are they preparatory? Maybe the Jews, in follow-up to that, if I get in the way, are they preparatory for the coming of Christ? Like an interim phase for the coming of Christ?
everything is preparatory to the coming of Christ. The entire point, and the thing is like, us eating candy is preparatory to the coming of Christ. Like, everything we do to sustain ourselves is preparatory. So it is all leading to that point.
There
So,
was a grand purpose for Jesus to set up the Jewish nation. There was a reason for it.
right,
And I justify that myself as it was supposed to be the light that would attract others.
they are the light to the Gentiles. I mean, that's it,
Yeah.
right in Isaiah, yeah. So yeah, so yeah, so you got to unpack that chosen thing a little bit. So because 500 years of Calvinism has done a job on that, of Calvin being this kind of not a Calvinist, I mean, the Congregationalism kind of shook off Calvinism about 100 years ago, but it's very, so John Calvin, about 500 years ago, one of probably the single most influential theologian that influenced kind of the Reformation, the congregational kind of theology.
Methodist?
So, what's that?
Methodist? You know Methodist? Is that what it-
No, that's Wesley is Methodist. Wesley was the founder of Methodism. So, yeah. So Calvin has this. There's a lot you can say. Just I'm trying to think about what's important to our conversation here. So basically, there's two kind of things. One is that there's an elect, kind of. So he's going from this chosen thing. He's saying, okay, there's a number of places where Paul talks about those who are elected, and so Calvin gets a hold of that, and I think really twists it and says, well, clearly there's a group of people who are going to be a group of Christians who are going to be elect, and they're going to be elected, because God is omniscient, all-seeing, and all-knowing, that everything really has been predestined. And so those people have been chosen to be saved, and then the rest of it, too bad, so sorry. But you don't know who that is. And so you look for signs of grace, and that might give you a clue that you might be one of the special ones. So there's this. And I know this sounds like, really? But it was the prevailing thought for 300 years. I mean, it changes. So I think the great change of it comes with, actually in America, with Jonathan Edwards, right out here in Northampton, where he starts, he really starts to and he has, his most famous sermon is "Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God," which is fantastic. It is so because it's one of these things that it deals with this issue. One of Calvin's things was this idea of total depravity, that humans are completely depraved and that they can only be saved by grace because we're just that bad. And so that there's this scene in the sermon where humanity is this spider being suspended over a fire, and it's just dangling over a fire on its web. And at any point, God could just cut that web and and it would fall into the thing. But the difference, what changed everything in that sermon is this slight little twist that Edwards came along with, which said, and you can do something about it. Because up until that point, you couldn't do anything about it. You could just try and figure out if you were one of the ones or not. And so there is this way in which the whole world changes when you get this sense of, and you can do something about that. You can swing yourself out of the fire. I don't remember how it all goes, but you can kind of choose to ally with God's grace and be a part of that which is so we've come to kind of understand this idea of and even if you've never heard of these people, it's so much a part of our worldview. You've heard of them, their ideas, even if you don't know their ideas, because they're just inculcated in everything, in most Christian thought that we kind of come across with. So the whole point of that is just to say that is that kind of sense of elect that Calvin is taking from, is he's kind of taking that chosen kind of thing, So the whole point of like, so the whole point of God choosing the nation of Israel is that it is never meant to stop with the nation of Israel, just like it says in Amos. Like the whole point is that it's going to, but they're chosen to be the place that God starts with humanity. So and it goes all the way to, so you get the creation story, you get Adam and Eve getting kicked out of the garden, you have the Tower of Babel, which is, okay, we think getting kicked out of the garden is the real problem. The real problem is actually the Tower of Babel. That's what this is all designed to heal, is not getting kicked out of the garden. It was the Tower of Babel that we should be as gods. Because they're building this tower, they should be as gods. They're going to be like us. So they can be, right. They can be. And so so God has to find kind of so that they basically get in this place, so that humanity gets in this place where they where because of the fallen angels, because of all that sort of stuff, and whatever you think of that in the story, just bear with me, that's the story. Because of the fallen angels, because of the Nephilim, because of the evil influence in the world, because of evil in the world, that people began to think they were God. That they not just gods, but that they were God. And that was the whole premise behind the idea of remember, if you remember all the God-making stuff that we talked about last week, or the demon-making stuff, that's what the Tower of Babel was meant to do. Was because it's a ziggurat, it's a temple, it's a place that you're going to go do those demon sacrifice worships, and you're going to create more demons in the world. That's the whole function of the Tower of Babel. We think it's just like, a universal translator, everybody can talk, but no, its real function was to actually support okay. And so God's like, okay, this isn't working out, so we need a flood. We're going to hit the reset. And so then you get Noah and the flood. And that's where, so you get this reset that comes from, the Nephilim and the at least the significant, the significant reduction of giants in the world, all of that. And then right after Noah, you get Abraham, and you get the Abrahamic covenant, which is where all of this, so that was kind of prelude to what's going on here, but the Abrahamic covenant is what's designed to heal this whole thing. And the Abrahamic covenant says, get up, go to this land that I will show you, and I will make you a great blessing on you, and your descendants will be like nations, like sand, like grains of sand on a beach, kind of basically. So in whatever it is, chapter, I don't know, what is it, 23? I can't remember, from Genesis. You help me out, Swifty. Come on. So from early on, from the beginning covenant of the whole thing. This first promise of God is that your descendants are going to be like the nations. The promise was always everybody was going to get saved. So the chosen people is this place, is like I really think of it in terms of, kind of a battlefield kind of idea, is the chosen people, where I have chosen Normandy Beach to be the place that we're going to go ashore, and we are going to make our inroads into this, and you 27th Division out of Virginia, you are going to go and be on Normandy Beach. You are the chosen people. The 27th Division was the chosen people on Omaha Beach. Good for them. You know what I mean? So, and 3,300 of them or whatever, paid sacrifice for that. Right, exactly. And it's always the promise. Like from Abraham on, it was always the promise. So the chosen people thing is, think of it like the 27th Division on D-Day. Okay, you guys are chosen to go into Omaha Beach. Thanks. It's a hard walk, but you're chosen to be the place in which and what do? They go into Omaha Beach, they set up a perimeter, and they have a place in which God can begin the Allied forces can begin to move make inroads. It's the same. So here's the drop zone. That's the people of Israel. The rules that are so draconian, the 627 rules that are just so draconian. The whole point of those rules is to keep this very boundaried space between the Israelites and the world, that they are different, so that inside that space, God can have a place to dwell. God can have a beachhead in which to begin to love humanity back into relationship. Does that make sense? So when you think about chosen, don't think about they're special, but you have a special task, like the 20, like they have it's.
That's not how they do it.
But this is exactly the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is exactly what's getting worked out in the 15th chapter. Is wait a minute, if we're James makes the case really well. He says, if we're in this Messiah age, the Gentiles are now coming, and so the Gentiles are now they're in right, exactly. Like we're a part of it. They're a part of it, and they're coming into this relationship, just like it's like invading France and saying, no Frenchmen. No, the whole point was to liberate the French. No. It's not just to kill Germans. It's to actually liberate the Germans. Are just the inconvenience about the fact that the French are liberated. The whole point was to liberate the French. So
I see the seeking as a two-way street. You see it as you stated it as God seeking a relationship back with us.
Right.
But it's the other way. It goes both ways. But we should be seeking the relationship.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that's the Holy Spirit working in us.
But if you're, but again, it's that whole do something. No, don't be sorry. Don't ever apologize for bringing me peanut M&Ms. Yeah, but there's the thing. I guess it's it's like the kids that grew up under communism after 80 years. It's what do you actually know? What are you actually able to articulate about what it is? There might be a longing in you to be free. There might be a longing in you to have your own things. There might be a longing in you for a better life. But right, you don't even those kind of and then you have I'm just going to stay with this metaphor because it's working. But you have kind of Radio Free Europe. You can hear a little bit of tee out there, whatever's going on. But there's really they don't know what that life looks like, and that's kind of the world. That's the world that the Israelites are in. And the Israelites are overrun. Numerous times. I mean, this is the whole problem. This is the whole problem in the prophets. This is the whole point that they get, why God permits them to actually be invaded and be dragged off to Babylon, because the fire base was overrun by
They lose the relationship with him.
That's right.
He lets it happen.
So many times.
Right. So many times.
Right.
Well, but God never stops loving them. God never stops working. Okay, we're not going to do that. All right, let's work this over. Let's work this angle. It's this. It's like that. It's that. So what's that foundation of that word I was talking about on Sunday, of that the chesed, the idea of steadfast love. That's what that means. That is that you can keep screwing it up, but I'm not going to stop. Trying to reaching in for the relationship for you and to bring you back. That steadfast. It's not just a constant warm feeling. It is a constant work and action to bring you back into relationship when you've fallen out of relationship.
I'm always there.
I'm always and
inside that, I may allow you to feel that that's between you and I individually, but he's always there.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep. Geez, we might not even read any Bible tonight.
It's okay, it's good combo.
All right, so the other thing is that's worth mentioning is at the end of so James quotes Amos, and then he says, then he gives those 4 things, which also end up in the letter that we were going to read. So the letter, the 4 things being, polluted by idols, sexual immorality, that which has been strangled, and eating blood. Like those are the 4 things that we don't do. And the reason those are the 4, one of the reasons those are, it's not just the only reason. We talked about last week, the reason is those are really all the things that are around temple worship. So those are really all the things that are around pagan worship. So don't actively participate in evil, like basically, But it doesn't say anything about killing anybody. It doesn't say anything about thievery. It doesn't say. I mean, you'd think those would be worth mentioning, but that's not the focus of. But the reason these 4 are mentioned is that in if you go back to Leviticus, where all the laws are laid out, Leviticus is just this big list of rules. It's usually about when people who say, I'm going to read the Bible, they usually die about Numbers and Leviticus because it just is so tedious to go through,
I literally just said in my head, I'm skipping that book.
Yeah. Well, there's some gems in there, but it is tough. Like, it's like, what do you do with mildew? Like, I mean, it's literally down to the granular level of but there's all these, and there's all these ways in which it says, okay, this is how the people of Israel have to treat this. This is how the people of Israel have to treat this. This is how the people of Israel have to treat this. But there are 4 things, or 3 things, I think, where it says, the people of Israel and the aliens living among you, and the Gentiles living among you, shouldn't do these things. And you know what they are? Take a guess.
It's evil.
They're the things that James says.
Right.
You have established Israel as a nation. There are definitely going to be foreigners living, because foreigners come into nations, they trade, they do all kinds of stuff. But if there are foreigners that come into the nation, there are things they can't do. The things they can't do while they're in your nation, they can't worship pagan idols. They can't eat blood, and they can't participate in the sexual immorality around those things. Those are the things they can't. So those were always rules for everybody. So James is just going back and actually pulling out. He's not only just pulling out the things that are, saying don't worry about all that other stuff. He's saying, no, we're not putting additional burdens on the people, and that's what it ends up saying in the letter, because people would understand that. Like, they always knew these were the things they weren't supposed to do if they're living among the Jews, but it's like, okay, we're not putting anything extra on you. So that was James. Like, but we should still all do the things that says God. We should do all the things. Right. Yeah.
Please do not read evil.
Right. Exactly. Right. Please do not actively pursue relationship with evil beings.
So like the 10 Commandments is like a given.
What's that?
The things of the 10 Commandments is a given.
Right. And the 10 Commandments, right, it's just we're going to come at the commandments. We're going to receive the commandments in a different way. Rather than receive the commandments as radical prohibitions, we're going to receive the commandments as radical promises. If you stay in relationship to Jesus, don't worry. You won't kill anybody. If you stay in relationship with me, don't worry. You won't want to steal stuff. Now you might want to steal stuff tomorrow, but if you stay in relationship with me, I will work with your heart. I will turn you in grace enough so that you will not want to take other people's stuff. You will not covet. Like the promise is not a prohibition any longer, but the rule is not a prohibition, but the rule becomes a promise when we're in relationship with Jesus. That's how it turns upside down. But the rule, they're still there. They're just very, we just encounter them differently. Does that make sense?
Exactly different angles.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the letter. And then I read this last time, but we didn't really spend a whole lot of time on it, and there's things in here that are worth talking about. So then it seemed good, so I'm in verse 22. So then it seemed good to the apostles and the elders with the whole church to choose men from among them and send them to Antioch with Paul and Barnabas. They sent Judas, called Barsabbas, and Silas, leading men among the brothers, and with the following letter. So they're in agreement. That really kind of the Spirit has kind of shown them this is the way ahead, and so they're going to send out. They're sending out Paul and Barnabas and Barsabbas and Silas. So they're sending out these guys that are they're kind of the rock stars in a way, because it's one of these. Remember, there've been all these voices out there sowing dissent. There's all these people that oh yes, I come from Jerusalem, and when I was in Jerusalem, I heard them say everybody should be circumcised. Now that was that was like the guy at the drugstore was saying that, not the actual apostles, but that's kind of how it was going. They were sowing dissent among saying, yeah, so they're sending out the people with the real bona fides, that when Paul shows up, when Barnabas shows up, they know, okay, this actually comes from the council. So this is they're sending out the trusted agents with these letters. And with the following letter. The brothers, both the apostles and the elders, to the brothers who are of the Gentiles in Antioch, Syria and Cilicia, greetings. So there's Antioch, which is a city. There's Syria, which is a region. There's Cilicia, which is kind of those are kind of boop, boop, boop. Those are kind of, so it's from Fall River, Fall River in Bristol County in the state of Massachusetts. That's kind of how you could read that. So, since we have heard some persons have gone out from us and troubled you, basically telling you need to be circumcised, with words, unsettling your minds, although we gave them no instructions, it has seemed good to us, having come to one accord, to choose men and send them to you with our beloved Barnabas and Paul. So Barnabas and Paul has this posse, and basically they're like, yeah, listen to these guys. But notice, nowhere does it say, and then Peter stood on the veranda of the basilica and delivered his encyclical. That's not what this is. I just love this is the conversation I would love to have with them, because it's they really, they'll say, okay, Peter's the rock of the church, but nowhere in here is Peter saying, I'm the top dog, and you all this is a council, and they sit in council, and in the council they decide, much like a congregation, they decide this is what the Spirit is telling us to do, and then we're going to go do it, and because why? Because we came of one accord, not because Peter said so, not because James said so, but because we all see, here's the point of wisdom here. And
That's called the power of Catholicism, that has been corrupted by the Roman Emperor Constantine.
Yeah.
And that's, the whole the Roman Catholic Church, going to the 1960s, all that stuff, that's all about power, and, keep control of the priesthood, stuff that, caused you a problem.
Yeah. Which
would cause me a problem too.
I'm a big fan of Constantine. I think he did great work in terms of what he was given to work with. But the idea, and I'm not even against how the early church ended up getting set up in terms of that it was wrong, because you gotta start where you are. You know what I mean? You can't. I heard there was a ridiculous person that said something like, well, if Paul was so powerful, why didn't he call for the elimination of slavery? And I'm like, the entire economic world of the ancient world runs on slavery. No one suggests that not being able to keep slaves is a good idea. Where, if somebody comes out and says that, it's not only ridiculous, but it's impossible. The entire world would fall apart tomorrow. And it's I'm why don't we just get rid of the military-industrial complex? Well, yes, that would be a wonderful thing, except for the fact that 40% of Americans would lose their job tomorrow. Maybe there's a little more of an elegant solution here that we can get closer to than further away. You know what I mean?
There's so many ridiculousness. We're surrounded by ridiculousness.
Right. You see what I mean? Like, and so there's these theologians though, but there's this theological ridiculousness of like, well, if Paul was so smart, why didn't he just call for the elimination of slavery? Because he was living in the fifth century, in the first century. It's like, God is not going to violate our freedom, and God is not going to take us to places where we, because even if that happened, it would be impossible to execute. It would be impossible to implement. It would be impossible to maintain as a real change over life. We all know this personally. Like, if you've ever quit anything that you really liked or really wanted to do, if you ever gave anything up that really, that had a real hold on you, there is this way in which that was a process under which that unfolded.
Well, that's how I was just about to say, that slavery was not abolished at that point because it still had to follow its purpose.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like everybody has.
And it's like compared to what? Because otherwise we just kill all those people.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is in the ancient world, you either took slaves or you killed everybody in the village. Genghis Khan's the greatest example because of because they were on horseback and they were constantly moving, they didn't really have they didn't have a mechanism to do much with slaves. Like, other than the fact that, like, if somebody had really good skills, like, oh, this guy's really good at this, like, oh, we'll keep him around. But they didn't have, they weren't like the Babylonians. They didn't have a big city they could send slaves back to, and they didn't have that. So they just killed everybody. They just killed everybody. Like, if you, their account after account, when the Mongols showed up on the horizon, just kill your children and drink the poison because it's all over. They're coming and nobody's going to survive this. And everybody knew it. It's like, so compared to what, slavery's bad. Quite honestly, slavery may not be, I can make somebody coffee, and bring it to them, because... Right. There's all manner of, but there's, and even in the Roman world, there's all kinds of opportunities to earn your freedom. There's, if you really want your freedom, and many slaves elect to stay in slavery because it's like, it's just not a bad life. It's not, we have kind of these ridiculous historical notions about if this is so bad, why do they just get rid of it? Because nothing in life works that way at all.
Right.
And when you're after
Anything bad in the world.
right, and you figure that out by the time you're about 14. But there is this kind of immature thinking that shows up in the world that's like, no, well, it's just God really loved us. This wouldn't really
Right.
you know.
But I think there are so many people that's what makes them not believe in God, right? Why do children die of cancer? Why wouldn't God just stop them? You know what
Right.
I mean?
Yep.
Why is there heart?
Okay, yeah.
Or is there,
Yep.
that? There's a lot of people that's what makes them
Yep.
waver.
So yeah. So here, and my response to that, if you're ever curious, it's like, what I say, what's your favorite sport? Okay, the NBA. All right. If we dismantled the entire NBA and we took all of the money that is focused on the National Basketball Association and focused it on the cure of cancer, you know what there would be? No cancer. But we don't devote resources that way. You know why there's cancer in the world for children? Because we allow it.
Yeah.
Not because God created it, because we allow it.
And free will.
We're willing to put up with a world that has cancer in it. And when humanity decides it is no longer willing to put up with a world that has cancer in it, you know what? There won't be. We'll figure it out. But we have so far, the evils of the world are there because we permit them. We have resources that we do not bring to bear, that we would rather spend on Pokemon cards than we would spend on the elimination of cancer. And so you can't pin that on God. You can't pin that on God. You can try.
Right? You could say the same thing with slavery back then.
Absolutely, right.
It's free will.
Yep.
It's not God that created the slavery.
Absolutely,
It's
right.
100%,
And
so it's the same thing.
and
But
every time you see God's movement in the world, it is towards more love, more wisdom, more justice. That, and that starts with Abraham not killing Isaac. Like, that's where that starts. Is, why is Abraham so willing to kill Isaac? Because that's what everybody's doing. And that's what God's always asked of people, is when God's are really serious, they say, go kill your children and give them to me. Like, and this is the first account that we have where, oh yeah, no. I want you to go through that so that you can learn that there's a different way. Like, I want you to take him to the mountaintop. I want you to tie him up. I want you to make a sacrifice. But we're going to do something else. Now we're going to do animal sacrifice rather than people, because animal sacrifices, everybody gets something out of that. It's a barbecue.
Right.
But everybody likes a barbecue, right? Like who doesn't like barbecue? What I mean? That's different. Everybody gets something out of that. Killing children, not so much. So that's that's kind of the most base level of God working with humanity in that way. Of like, okay, this is your pattern. All right, we're gonna shift your pattern, and we're gonna, and there's a lot of psychology in this, of the sense of like, we're not gonna have you stop doing something. We're going to substitute something out so that you don't do so that you can do something better. Instead of punching the wall, maybe we can flick a rubber band on your wrist and count to 10. Like, we're going to substitute. Like, and this is kind of basic. I don't know. I'm sure there's a name for it. I don't know, but
It's basic psychology.
yeah, right. And it's that, right. And it's. I mean, that's at the heart of how God works with humanity too. So, okay, we're not going to get anywhere tonight, are we? I'm just all full of it. But
You're on verse 24.
all right. So 24. Since we have heard that some persons have gone out from us and trouble you. Okay. Although we gave them no instructions, it just seemed good to us, having come to one accord, to choose men and send them to you, beloved Barnabas and Paul. So Barnabas and Paul, we're going to come back to why that's important. Men who have risked their lives in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. What happened? Remember Pamphylia? What happened to Paul in Pamphylia?
Did he get stoned?
That's where he got stoned, right? And I'm still of the contention, although it's very debated, but I think he not only was stoned, but he was killed and resurrected, or at least something very close, because he is stoned, and then but moments later, a few minutes later, he he struts back into town saying, "Hey, everybody," So he's got some street cred that nobody else has. We have therefore sent Judas and Silas, who themselves tell you the same thing by word of mouth, for it has seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us. Now that line comes back throughout church history. That line is super important because it comes back throughout church history. Whenever you find councils in, like you find the Council of Nicaea, you find the council of all of the church councils, they will use a variation of that line. That how do we know this is God's will? Because it seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us. There's an accord with the people that are trying to figure out what we should do and the Holy Spirit. And they know this by the experience of the community when it's gathered. Well, what does that sound like to me? It sounds like a solid congregational meeting after a big casserole. Like, it sounds like it's exactly what we seek to do when we gather as the church, is that we make decisions that are consensus with each other, but it's also consensus with God. That is also has the movement of the Holy Spirit within them, and we know that. That will be a critical line that will come through church history for hundreds of years. And so, for it seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us to lay on you no greater burden than these requirements, that you abstain from sacrificed idols, from blood, and from what has been strangled in sexual immorality. If you keep yourself from these, you will do well. Fare well. So there's this notion that, again, those things that they were already asked to prohibit from as aliens. They're not getting an extra rule here. This is a rule that they've always had, and that basically that rule is around don't participate in demon creation and pagan sacrifice, which is really what all those things are pointed towards. So they were sent off, and they went to Antioch, and having gathered the congregation together, they delivered the letter. And when they had read it, they rejoiced because of its encouragement. So, yay! I don't have to get a circumcision at 35. Awesome! Like, yeah, you can see how they might be excited about that. And Judas and Silas, who were themselves prophets, encouraged and strengthened the brothers with many words. Now, I just want to, so Judas and Silas are named as prophets, okay? But what do? Well, I mean, it says right here.
Yeah.
They encourage and they strengthen, right?
Yeah.
Nowhere does it say they take out the Ouija board, they get out the tarot cards. Nowhere does it say they speak in tongues and try and figure out what the future is. None of this, the prophetic voice, we've been given this bill of goods that the prophetic voice is actually the voice that is like future casting, you know what I mean? Like fortune tellers, like that's going to be the prophetic thing. But actually the prophetic thing is encourage and strengthen. Right. So think about, I want you to think about that for a second, because being prophetic is much more about like saying to, Audrey, you've been drinking a lot. And I'm worried about you. You know, like, I mean, it's okay, maybe not. Like, but you know what I mean? but you know what I mean? Like, that's prophetic. That's he's encouraging them, and they're strengthening them. They're telling them the truth. They're sitting with them in it. They're giving them encouragement. But they might be hard things to say. They might be difficult things. But those are you can see how those are prophetic, right? Like that's a prophetic word. That's much more what they're talking about. Is like really caring for people where they are and being willing to be in it with them. And like I think of your work as prophetic a lot. Like, because I'm sure you have a lot of prophetic conversations with people about there are things I see that you don't see, and I'm here to encourage you and support you in them and strengthen you in them. Like
It's
that.
the secret of therapy.
Yeah, right. Rocket science. That's right.
Oh, I just teach people to be nice.
I teach people to be nice. I just teach people to be nice. Yes, the same exact quote could be said of Jesus, by the way. But
That's literally.
I just teach people to be nice.
Down doing that, that's all about connection.
It is,
Right?
exactly.
It all kind of comes back to that same thing of acceptance, connection, and relationship.
It can't happen without, right, it can't happen without connection. Yep. But so anyway, I just want to talk about the prophetic because this is a really good example of it. And we get, out into, we've been kind of,
Soothsaying, I think there's
yeah,
soothsaying.
well, yeah, or, I mean, and there's plenty of good Christian examples out there, or not good Christian examples, but they're examples, if we, in kind of the evangelical world and all that, the Lord has given me a word, it's like, well, maybe, like maybe, but that's, if he, you have to be really careful because that has been attributed to what this is, and that's not the same. What this is much more an idea of kind of what we were talking about. So,
I have a question.
yeah.
So when it says that idols and then it says stay away from blood,
Yeah.
they mean like drinking blood?
Or eating blood, yeah. Eating blood, yeah.
Well, I eat my steak medium rare.
Oh,
It doesn't have blood in it, though.
Okay.
I think you're good.
So the red stuff is albumin. It's not blood. And it's about the actual eating of like real blood. Like there are people who do. Like I mean the Mexicans they do fried pigeon blood.
Well,
There's
my in-laws used to eat
yeah.
salad,
Yeah.
which is blood
blood pudding. Yep.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
So
I don't care for it. But
So is that where the Jehovah's Witnesses get like their no blood transfusions, like their?
yeah, it's out of the Levitical law. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's out of the Levitical law that they get all of that. Yeah, the no blood transfusions, the no no taking oaths, all that.
Blood is like sacred,
all-
blood is, you
yeah,
can't give it to anybody else,
yeah,
you can't
all
receive
of
it
that,
from anybody else.
exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
I was wondering if that line
Yeah.
right there was actually where,
Yep.
or not right there, but that idea
It comes out of that 24th chapter of Leviticus, that
Right.
Levitical law. That's exactly where they draw that. Yeah, they draw that out of that. And yeah, and I mean the real thing about the prohibition around blood is because that was really what was happening at the temples. So that was what's happening at the pagan temples. It's not just that. Oh, I have I'm gonna have a delicious little cocktail before I go to bed. Like it wasn't that was happening so much as that the strangulation, the blood, the sexual immorality, the worshiping of pagan idols were really, now people will fight with me on that. If you go look this up on the internet, there are people who will say otherwise, but my contention is all of that is really one ball of these are the things that happened at the pagan temples. And these are the things that happen. These are the things that you do when you go to a pagan temple and you actually engage in the worship there. Not just walk by or not just say hi to your friend Charlie who happens to be going to the pagan temple, but when you go and you participate, these elements will be a part of it. And so it's really pointing, because it has all these points in it, it's really pointing directly at the fact that, look, don't go to the pagan temple and participate in the pagan temple.
And some of that I think is even older than the Greek and Roman gods, because I remember hearing it and that sort of stuff in the Greek and Roman gods,
Mhm.
but I think it's the gods of ancient,
Yeah.
that area.
Oh yeah. So the mistake, yeah, because
Really nasty stuff
yeah,
goes
'cause-
on in that area.
right. So the mistake gets made is that people think that the Roman and the Greek gods are actually like the first iteration of the Western world and the Western kind of gods, the Western construct. But it's actually quite the opposite. If you look at the gods and you look at them all stacked up, there's actually the timeline that they're actually the last incarnation of a long thousands and thousands of years of gods like them behind them. So we think of them as like, oh, these are the guys, the Zeus and the Apollos, they're the ones that kind of founded Western civilization. They're actually the last gasp of all of these gods that have,
Pretty tame.
right. I mean, you've got Abraham 2,000 years earlier or 4,000 years earlier contending with these same kind of gods, with these same kind of principalities.
Right.
So they're the same kind of movement. So the gods have been around for a long, like they've been kind of dominating the world for a long time, and we get the last view of them. So that's where we get the mistake, is because we think like, oh, there's the it's like no, they're actually it's
Really?
like that rather than like that.
If you actually went out and studied Egyptian gods, talk about freaking disgusting.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, they all
Their
are.
worship was about incest and all kinds of crazy
They
stuff.
all, yeah. They're two. I mean,
Sick, drunk.
pagan gods are pagan gods for a reason. Like they are demons in disguise. Like that's what they are. That's what these principalities are. And they come, and they had faces and names then, and they have faces and names now. They're just different faces and names. But they exist. They still exist. They have. I mean, I think they have less hold over us than they ever have. But they're still out there. They're still. I mean. Moloch is the machine god. Are we contending with any machine gods these days? Like, yeah. Or even just the worship of our screen. I mean, you could say, like, if you're sitting there scrolling, you could say that looks a lot like, with the Orthodox practice of veneration. You know what I mean? Like, we're just venerating this little object. Like, oh, like we're petting it. We pet it every day. I mean, it's like we're contending with these things now.
We're going to talk about us living in our own terrariums. I
Yeah.
use that phrase here. We get in our own little world,
Yeah.
and we miss what's out
Yeah.
there.
So, well, the world is so much more. I mean, I just think it's that these things that we're contending with are so much more ancient than they.
Oh, this stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So. All right. So we have. So we're going to put a big pin in it because I'm going to be away for some time. So I'm grateful and thankful for all of your willingness to kind of come together tonight. And
Thanks for
Yeah, that's not being done.
Yeah,
You too.
yeah, well, and we are gonna stick with Mondays from here on out, because I think it's just a better night for all of us, and, we can always, like, if the knitting group is here, we can always go to the Suter Library, where we've got plenty of spaces we can meet in here, so.
Out of here by 10 minutes to 6.
Okay, even better, there we go, so,
We wish you.
We go that way.
I see you Sunday.
Oh, that's all.
yeah, I'm here Sunday, yeah, so I just,
All
I
right.
might wanna put that in a cool place,
What's that?
the chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
Your office?